There was a time when faith ruled all when questions were dangerous and curiosity was sin. But then something changed. A spark, not divine but human, ignited a revolution of thought. The Age of Reason had begun. Faith, the Age of Reason. Faith in the light of science. Once, the sky was the home of the gods, and the stars were their eyes. But then, a man turned his telescope towards the heavens. And in searching for God's home, humanity encountered the infinity of the universe. This was the Age of Enlightenment, the period when the chains on the human mind were broken, and the first cracks appeared in the walls of dogma. However, through these cracks, not only light but also doubt seeped in. Humans set forth once more, not just to believe, but to know. This was one of their noblest and most dangerous adventures. The dawn of the Age of Reason. At the end of the 16th and the beginning of the 17th century, a new spirit began to circulate in the intellectual veins of Europe. The Renaissance had placed humanity back at the center. But now, humanity wished to approach God's secret, not just with art, but with reason. For centuries, the Church had been the sole authority on wisdom. However, this authority began to shake when science started to discover the language of nature. When Copernicus said, "The Earth moves," he did not merely present an astronomical thesis. He enacted a revolution that removed humanity from the center of the universe. This was the rewriting of humanity's thousand-year-old story regarding its place in the cosmos. And when Galileo Galilei proved this idea, the voice of science turned into an effort not against the voice of God, but to understand it better. But the shadow of the Inquisition was long and cruel. Galileo kneeling and saying, "And yet it moves," was the silent rebellion of reason. That moment was also the stage for a tragic dilemma between a person's faith and reason. This was one of the birth pangs of modern humanity. God, nature, and mathematics. In the middle of the 17th century, Isaac Newton solved the workings of the universe like a divine machine. Gravity, laws of motion, optics, all this showed that nature operated not chaotically but with a divine order. For Newton, God still existed, but no longer as a miracle-working God, but as an engineer who had established a perfect order and left the clock running. This idea was named deism. It was still possible to believe in God, but based on reason, not the Church. This was not a loss, but a transformation. Faith was evolving from authority to experience, from obedience to inquiry. God was no longer seen as a feared sovereign, but as an admired architect. Spinoza and the redefinition of the sacred. In the same period, Baruch Spinoza went even further. For him, God was not a being separate from nature. God was nature itself, the essence of everything that exists. This radical idea shook both the devout and the philosophers, because when Spinoza said, "God is in the universe," he also made humanity a part of a divine whole. God was no longer in the sky, but breathing within every atom. This idea paved the way for feeling the divine within and around us, instead of seeking religion externally. The sacred could now be sought not only in temples, but also in the veins of a leaf or the silence of the night sky. This was a thought both revolutionary and comforting for the human soul. The battlefield of reason and faith. By the 18th century, the Enlightenment was no longer a mere thought but a movement. Voltaire, Rousseau, Diderot, and others wanted to guide humanity not with holy texts, but with the light of reason. Dare to know. Have the courage to use your own reason. This was Kant's call. But Kant also knew, reason has limits. Faith blossoms beyond those limits. And thus, humanity never fully turned its back on God. It only sought new ways to understand Him. This conflict was essentially a dance between the two fundamental pillars of human nature, reason seeking certainty on one side, and the spirit seeking meaning on the other. The Enlightenment represented the most dynamic, exuberant, and fruitful period of this dance. the new form of the sacred. The Enlightenment did not kill God, but it redefined him. Science explained how the universe works, but not why it exists. This void still echoes within humanity. Perhaps God is not in the formula, but in the question itself. Perhaps faith is not about finding the answer, but about never ceasing to search. This search is what makes us human. Behind the eye looking through the cold glass of the telescope beats a heart that wishes to transcend the stars. Science asks us how, and philosophy asks why. Together, they form humanity's endless journey toward truth. The Age of Reason. It is not the age when humanity abandoned God, but when it learned to look at him through the eyes of reason. The heavens are no longer the throne of the gods, but perhaps the place where humanity comes closest to God. Silent, infinite, and full of meaning. Because there, we find both the physical laws discovered by reason and the indescribable awe felt by the heart simultaneously.